Y'all got 33 days to get out my house. I stood in Big Mama's old kitchen in southwest Atlanta, holding the deed with my name on it while my sister's face went from caramel to ash. Mama dropped her good china plate, the one we only bring out for Easter and Thanksgiving, and it shattered across the linoleum floor that still had scuff marks from when I learned to roller skate in this very room. My daddy's hand froze mid-reach for his coffee mug, the steam still rising from that cheap Folgers. He refused to stop drinking even though I'd bought him the good stuff from that black-owned coffee shop on Edgewood. The whole kitchen smelled like Fabuloso and burnt bacon grease, and I could hear Shirley Caesar playing low from the radio on the counter. "Kathy, baby, you can't be serious," Mama finally said, her voice shaking. I looked at her directly, my silk press still fresh from the salon yesterday, my burgundy nails gripping that deed like it was the last life raft on a sinking ship. "Dead serious. Should have thought about that before you called me and my dog freeloaders and put us out on the street." Sandra's mouth opened and closed like a fish, and Pops actually stood up from the table, his chair scraping loud against the floor. My hands were trembling, but I kept my face stone cold, the way I'd practiced in the mirror of my new apartment for the past 3 weeks. Won't he do it? But to understand how I ended up standing in this kitchen with a legal document that would put my entire family on the street, you have to go back 5 years to when Uncle Jerome first offered me this house. I was 36 years old, working as a freelance web designer, making more money than anyone in my family knew about because every time I mentioned my income, they acted like I was lying or doing something illegal. Uncle Jerome was my daddy's brother, but he'd always treated me better than Pops ever did, probably because he never had kids of his own and saw something in me that my own parents couldn't. He called me one Sunday after church and said, "Imani, baby, I'm moving to that senior community over in Decatur. My house is paid off and I want you to have it. The title will transfer when you turn 41, but you can move in whenever you want." I almost dropped the phone. That bungalow in southwest Atlanta, right in Old Fourth Ward before it got too gentrified, was worth at least $450,000. I asked him 3 times if he was sure, and he just laughed that deep laugh of his and said, "Baby girl, you're the only one in this family with any sense. Your daddy and them don't appreciate you, but I do. Take the house and build something for yourself." So I moved in, set up my office in the spare bedroom with the good light, and started living the life I'd always dreamed about. Working from home in my bonnet until noon, taking meetings in my corporate voice while wearing pajama pants, making my own schedule. My clients were mostly tech startups and small businesses that needed websites, and I was charging $2,000 per project. Life was good. Then my parents' house started falling apart. The roof was leaking, the foundation had cracks, and Pop's retirement check from the post office wasn't enough to cover a full renovation. Mama called me crying one day, using that guilt voice she perfected over the years, talking about how they might have to move into subsidized housing. Against my better judgment, against that voice in my spirit that said, "Girl, don't do it," I told them they could stay with me temporarily. Temporarily turned into 2 years. Temporarily turned into them taking over my whole life, criticizing everything I did, comparing me to Sandra, who worked a temp job at some corporate office and acted like she was Oprah. Then Sandra's marriage fell apart and she showed up with 8 suitcases and an attitude. The first 6 months weren't terrible. My parents mostly kept to themselves and I worked my usual schedule, knocking out websites and making my money. But then Mama started with the comments. Little things at first. "Imani, you're already over 38. Don't you think you should be thinking about marriage?" Or, "Your sister's got a real job at a real office. When are you going to do something serious with your life?" I'd remind her that I made more in 3 months than Sandra made all year, but she'd wave her hand like I was speaking nonsense. Pops would just grunt and turn up the television, watching his westerns like he always did, occasionally throwing in his 2 cents about how I needed to stop playing on that computer and get a real career. The disrespect was constant but manageable. I just put on my headphones, blast some Jill Scott and keep working. Then Sandra moved in and everything shifted. She took over the guest room without asking, spreading her stuff everywhere, leaving her wigs on the bathroom counter, her bonnets on the couch, her shoes by the front door. She'd quit her temp job after the divorce, saying she needed time to heal and find herself, which apparently meant sleeping until noon and talking about me with Mama all day long. I'd hear them in the kitchen while I was trying to work. "Did you see what Imani was wearing yesterday? Looking like she just rolled out of bed." Well, she works from home, Sandra. She can wear whatever she wants. That's the problem, Mama. She's got no structure, no discipline. That's why she can't keep a man. Lord have mercy, you might be right. I wanted to storm in there and remind them that I was paying for everything in this house, that my so-called lack of structure was funding their groceries, their utilities, their entire existence, but I kept quiet. My spirit was telling me to speak up, to set boundaries, but I ignored it. That was my first mistake. One Wednesday afternoon, I had a video call with a client from Seattle, a tech startup that wanted a complete website overhaul. They were offering $8,500 for the project. I'd gotten dressed for the call, put on a blazer over my tank top, laid my edges down nice, made sure my lighting was perfect. The call went smoothly. I code switched into my corporate voice, walked them through my portfolio, explained my timeline and deliverables with the kind of confidence that comes from being excellent at what you do. They were impressed. The CEO, a black woman around my age, even said, "Your work is incredible. We're lucky to have found you." When I hung up and closed my laptop, I felt that rush of satisfaction that comes from being recognized for your talent. Then I heard Sandra's voice from the hallway. "See, Mama. She's been on that computer for 8 hours straight. That's not healthy." I walked out of my office and found her standing there with Mama, both of them looking at me like I'd done something wrong. "That was a client meeting," I said, keeping my voice level. "I just secured a project worth $8,000. Sandra rolled her eyes. "Sure you did. And I'm Beyoncé." Mama just sighed. "Imani, baby, we're just worried about you. You're always cooped up in that room. It's not natural." I felt something crack inside me, but I swallowed it down. This is my job. This is how I make a living. The living that pays for this entire house. Sandra sucked her teeth. "Don't act like you're doing us some big favor. Uncle Jerome gave you this house. You didn't earn it." That's when I should have told them to leave. That's when I should have trusted my gut. But I didn't. I just walked back into my office and closed the door. Everything changed when I got Coco. My girl Tasha's Chihuahua had puppies, and she offered me one of them. I'd wanted a Chihuahua since I was 12 years old. Back when I used to watch Legally Blonde on repeat and dream about having a tiny dog that would love me unconditionally. Coco was black with these huge brown eyes that looked right into your soul. And when I picked her up for the first time, she licked my face and I knew she was mine. I brought her home on a Thursday afternoon, and immediately my family started complaining. "We didn't agree to a dog," Pop said. "Dogs smell," Sandra added, wrinkling her nose. "You should have consulted us first," Mama chimed in. I set Coco down on the floor and looked at all three of them standing in my living room like a tribunal. "This is my house," I said quietly. "I'm paying for everything, including the dog food and vet bills. If you have a problem with it, you're free to leave." The silence was thick enough to cut with a knife. Then, like magic, Coco did something adorable, tilting her head and wagging her tail, and suddenly everyone was cooing over her. Within 3 hours, they were all in love with her. Sandra was taking pictures for Instagram. Mama was baby talking. Pops was letting Coco sleep on his lap. The next 2 weeks were the most peaceful I'd had in months. They were so distracted by Coco that they barely bothered me. I got my work done, took Coco for walks in the neighborhood, and actually felt like I could breathe in my own home. Then came the incident. I had to run to the FedEx store to ship a hard drive to a client. I was gone for maybe 45 minutes. When I got back, Sandra was screaming, "Imani, get in here right now." I walked into her room and saw Coco's mess on a pile of Sandra's clothes that had been thrown on the floor. Sandra was standing there with her hands on her hips, her face twisted in rage. "Your stupid dog ruined my clothes. You're going to pay for the dry cleaning." I looked at the mess, then at Sandra, then at the clothes that she'd left scattered across the floor instead of hanging in the closet like a grown woman should. "Just wash them," I said. "And maybe if you kept your room clean, this wouldn't have happened." Her eyes went wide. "What did you just say to me?" "You heard me. Coco's a puppy. She's still being trained. You were supposed to take her for a walk today and you didn't." "I was going to take her later." "When?" "After you finished talking about me with Mama?" Something in Sandra's face shifted. She stepped closer to me, her voice dropping to that dangerous low tone. "I'm sick of you and this dumb dog. I'm sick of you acting like you're better than everyone else just because you work from home. You know what? Get out. We don't need a homeworking freeloader here anymore. The words hit me like a slap. Before I could respond, Mama and Pops appeared in the doorway. That's right, Imani, Mama said. You need to leave. Your presence is making everyone miserable. Pops nodded. Take your dog and go. You're a jinx. I stood there in the center of that room in my house, being told to leave by people who had contributed nothing but criticism and pain. My hands were shaking. Coco was whimpering at my feet, sensing the tension. All three of them were staring at me, waiting for me to break down, to beg, to apologize. But something in me went quiet and cold. 3 days earlier, Uncle Jerome had called to tell me the title transfer was complete. The house was legally mine now, all the paperwork filed with the county. None of them knew. I smiled. Okay, I said softly. I'll leave. I packed my things in less than 2 hours, grabbed Coco and her supplies, and walked out of that house without looking back. As I loaded my car, Sandra stood on the porch with her arms crossed. This is all your fault, you know. If you just listened to me, none of this would have happened. I didn't respond. I just got in my car, put Coco in her carrier and drove away. In my rearview mirror I could see all three of them standing there, probably already planning how they'd rearrange the furniture now that I was gone. Y'all got 33 days to get out my house. Standing in that kitchen 3 weeks later, watching the realization slowly dawn on their faces, I felt a satisfaction I'd never experienced before. This was the moment I'd been visualizing every night in my new apartment, the moment when everything they'd taken for granted would be ripped away. Sandra found her voice first. Wait, what do you mean your house? I held up the deed, letting the afternoon light hit the gold seal. Uncle Jerome transferred the title to me 8 days before you kicked me out. This house has been legally mine for almost a month now. I've already listed it with a realtor. The sale closes in 68 days, but you three need to be out in 33. Mama started crying, that manipulative crying she'd always used to get her way. Baby, you can't do this to your own family. Where will we go? Should have thought about that before you called me a jinx and told me to get out. Pops tried his corporate voice, the one he used to use when he was still working at the post office. Now, Imani, let's be reasonable about this. We made a mistake. We're sorry. You can't just put us on the street. Watch me. Sandra lunged forward like she was going to snatch the deed from my hands, but I stepped back. Don't even think about it. I've got copies at my lawyer's office, at the courthouse, and in my safety deposit box. And just so you know, I documented everything. Every text message where you insulted me. Every voicemail. Every dollar I spent supporting you. If any of you try to squat or damage this property, I will pursue full legal action. That's when I pulled out my second move, the one they never saw coming. Before I'd come here today, I'd contacted every family member who'd ever offered me sympathy about how my parents and Sandra treated me. Aunt Joyce, Cousin Marcus, Uncle Jerome, even Big Mama before she passed. I'd compiled testimonies, dates, financial records showing I'd paid for everything while they contributed nothing. Then I'd created a family group chat with every single relative and posted the whole truth with receipts. By the time I was standing in this kitchen, 53 family members had already seen the documentation. Sandra's phone started buzzing. Then Mama's. Then Pop's. They pulled out their phones and I watched their faces change as they read the messages. Aunt Joyce. Imani, baby, you did the right thing. They've been using you for years. Cousin Marcus. About time somebody stood up to them. Y'all should be ashamed. Uncle Jerome. That's my girl. I knew you had it in you. Mama looked up at me with tears streaming down her face, but this time they looked real. You turned the whole family against us. No, I said calmly. I just told the truth. Y'all did that to yourselves. I turned to leave, then stopped at the doorway. Oh, and one more thing. I contacted Sandra's ex-husband. Told him about all those designer bags and shoes she bought with the alimony money while claiming she was broke. He's filing to modify the divorce settlement. Good luck with that. Sandra's face went completely pale. I walked out of that house for the final time, got in my car where Coco was waiting, and drove back to my new life. My apartment in Midtown was everything I'd wanted. Pet-friendly, modern, with floor-to-ceiling windows that let in natural light all day. My web design business was thriving. Without the constant stress and criticism, I'd actually taken on more clients and raised my rates. I was making $2,800 per project now, sometimes more. 6 months later, I ran into Sandra at the Publix on Ponce. She was wearing her work uniform, some retail job at a clothing store. Her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, no makeup, looking exhausted. She saw me and froze. I had on a burgundy wrap dress, my hair freshly done in goddess locks, carrying Coco in a custom leather carrier that cost more than Sandra probably made in 2 weeks. I could have walked past her, could have ignored her completely, but instead I stopped, adjusted my designer sunglasses, and gave her the sweetest smile I could manage. "Hey Sandra, how you been?" She couldn't even meet my eyes. "Fine. That's good. Real good. You look like you're working hard. I love that for you." The shade was subtle but deadly. She knew exactly what I meant. "Imani, bless your heart," I said, cutting her off. Then I walked away, Coco's little head poking out of the carrier, both of us heading toward a future that belonged entirely to us. That night, sitting on my balcony with Coco curled up in my lap, I thought about everything that had happened. The betrayal, the anger, the revenge, the freedom. My phone buzzed with a notification. A new client inquiry, someone willing to pay $12,000 for a full website build. I smiled and scratched behind Coco's ears. "Baby girl," I whispered. "We don't just survive, we thrive." And for the first time in 5 years, I felt completely, totally, peacefully free. If this story hit you where it counts, make sure you subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from. Let's show the world how far this message reaches. Sometimes we carry things in silence, but when we speak up, we give someone else the permission to breathe again. We're here to help each other survive the struggle and come out stronger on the other side. So keep your eyes open, trust your soul, and remember that every small step you take is building your legacy. Keep it real out there.